And Mel, could you turn that damn music up? That was when his daughter looked up and spotted the couple kneeling in the lot. What's the matter with those two? She asked her father. They're like kneeling in the rain. Starkey finally managed a thin smile. Guess they'd just been saved, and now they're thanking the Lord, he said.
Chapter 30. On a cold day in early October, Sampson and I made the 6-hour trip by car back to Central Prison in Raleigh. We talked very little on the ride down. The clock had run out on Ellis Cooper. 2 days earlier, Cooper had been officially informed of his execution date by North Carolina's Department of Correction. Then he had been moved to the prison's death watch area. Things were proceeding in an orderly and deadly fashion. Sampson and I had been authorized by the Division of Prisons to visit Sergeant Cooper. When we arrived at Central Prison, about a dozen protesters were out in the parking areas. Most were women, and they were singing gentle folk songs that harkened back to the 60s or even earlier. 3 or 4 held up signs condemning capital punishment. We hurried inside the prison and could still hear the mournful hymns beyond the heavy stone and mortar walls. The death watch area at Central had 4 cells lined up side by side and opened to a day room with a TV and shower. Ellis Cooper was the only prisoner on death watch at that time. 2 corrections officers were stationed outside his cell 24 hours a day. They were respectful and courteous when we arrived. Ellis Cooper looked up as we entered the area and seemed glad to see us. He smiled and raised his hand in greeting. "Hello, Ellis," Sampson said in a quiet voice as we took chairs outside the cell. "Well, we're back. Empty-handed, but we're back." Cooper sat on a small stool on the other side of the bars. The legs of the stool were screwed into the floor. The cell itself was immaculately clean and was sparsely furnished with a bed, sink, toilet, and a wall-mounted writing table. The scene was depressing and desperate. "Thank you for coming, John and Alex. Thanks for everything you've done for me." "Tried to do," said Sampson. "Tried and failed. Fucked up is all we did." Cooper shook his head. "Just wasn't in the cards this time. Deck was stacked against us. Not your fault. Not anybody's," he muttered. "Anyway, it's good to see the 2 of you. I was praying you'd come. Yeah, I'm praying now." Sampson and I knew that vigorous legal efforts were still proceeding to try to stop the execution, but there didn't seem much reason to talk about them. Not unless Cooper chose to bring the matter up, and he didn't. He seemed strangely at peace to me, the most relaxed I'd seen him. His salt and pepper hair was cut short, and his prison coveralls were neat and looked freshly pressed. He smiled again. "Like a nice hotel in here, you know? Luxury hotel. 4 stars, 5 diamonds, whatever signifies the finest. These 2 gentlemen take good care of me. Best I could expect under the circumstances. They think I'm guilty of the 3 murders, but they're pleasant, all the same." Then Cooper leaned into the steel bars and got as close as he could to Sampson. "This is important for me to say, John. I know you did your best, and I hope you know that too. But like I said, the deck against me was stacked so goddamn high. I don't know who wanted me to die, but somebody sure did." He looked directly at Sampson. "John, I have no reason in the world to lie to you. Not now. Not here on Death Watch. I didn't murder those women." Chapter 31. 24 hours earlier, Sampson and I had signed an agreement to be searched before we entered the execution room. Now, at 1 o'clock in the morning, 16 men and 3 women were led into the small viewing room inside the prison. One of the men was General Stephen Bowen from Bragg. He'd kept his promise to be there, the U.S. Army's only representative. At 20 minutes past 1 in the morning, the black drapes to the execution chamber were opened for the witnesses. I didn't want to be there. I didn't need to see another execution to know how I felt about them. On the order of the prison warden, the lethal injection executioner approached Cooper. I heard Sampson suck in a breath beside me. I couldn't imagine what it would be like for him to watch his friend die like that. The movement of the technician seemed to startle Ellis Cooper. He turned his head and looked into the viewing room for the first time. The warden asked him if he'd like to make a statement. Cooper's eyes found us, and he held contact. The eye contact was incredibly powerful, as if he were about to lose us as he fell into the deepest chasm. Then Ellis Cooper spoke. His voice was reedy at first, but it got stronger. I did not murder Tanya Jackson, Barbara Green, or Maureen Bruno. I would say so if I did. Take this final injection like the man I was trained to be. I didn't kill the 3 women outside Fort Bragg. Someone else did. God bless you all. Thank you, John and Alex. I forgive the United States Army, which has been a good father to me. Ellis Cooper held his head up, proudly, like a soldier on parade. The executioner stepped forward. He injected a dose of Pavulon, which is a total muscle relaxer, and would stop Cooper's breathing. Very soon, Ellis Cooper's heart, lungs, and brain stopped functioning. Sergeant Cooper was pronounced dead by the warden of Central Prison at 1:31 a.m. Sampson turned to me when it was over. We just watched a murder, he said. Someone murdered Ellis Cooper, and they got away with it.
Part 2. Jamila. Chapter 32.
I was early to meet the flight coming into Gate 74 at Reagan National, and once I was at the airport, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was definitely nervous. Good nervous, with anticipation. Jamila Hughes was coming to visit. The airport was crowded at about 4 on a Friday afternoon. Lots of weary, edgy business people sitting around ending their work weeks on the computer or already off the clock at the bar, or reading magazines and popular novels that ranged from Jonathan Franzen to Nora Roberts to Stephen King. I sat down, then popped up again. Finally, I walked close to the large, expansive windows and watched a big American jet slowly taxi to the gate. Well, here we go. Am I ready? Is she? Jamila was in the second wave of passengers getting off the plane. She had on jeans, a mauve top, a black leather car jacket that I remembered from our stakeouts together in New Orleans. The two of us had become fast friends on a bizarre homicide case that had started in her hometown of San Francisco, weaved its way through the South, including the Big Easy, then ended up on the West Coast again. We had been talking about seeing each other ever since, and now we were actually doing it. It was pretty courageous on both of our parts. I just hoped it wasn't dumb. I didn't think so, and I hoped Jam felt the same way. Jesus, I was twitching as she came walking up to me. She looked great, though. Nice, big smile. What was I so worried about? Where are the thick white clouds that are supposed to be covering the city as my plane approached? God, I could see everything. The White House, Lincoln Memorial, the Potomac, Jamila said, grinning. I leaned in and gave her a kiss. Not every city has mountains of fog like San Francisco. You need to travel more. Your flight okay? Sucked. Jamila grinned again. I don't like flying much these days, but I'm glad to be here. This is good, Alex. You're almost as nervous as I am. We never had trouble talking on stakeouts. We'll be fine. We'll be just fine. Now calm down so I can calm down. Deal? She grabbed me in both arms, hugged me, then kissed me lightly, but nicely, on the lips. That's much better, she said, and smacked her lips. You taste good. You must like spearmint. No, I like you. We were a whole lot more comfortable during the ride into Washington in my old Porsche. We talked about everything that had been happening since we'd last seen each other. At first, it was work stuff. But then we got into the whole terrorist mess, then how my family was, and hers, and as usual, neither of us shut up once we got started, which I love. It was only as I pulled up to the house that things began to feel tense for me again. "You ready for this?" I asked, before we got out of the car. Jamila rolled her eyes. "Alex, I have 4 sisters and 3 brothers back in Oakland. Are you ready for that?" "Bring them on," I said, as I grabbed hold of her black leather duffel bag, which felt as if it held a bowling ball, and headed toward the house. I was holding my breath, but I was definitely glad that she was here. I hadn't been this excited in a long time. "I missed you," I said. "Yeah, me too," said Jam. Chapter 33. Obviously, Nana had been thinking about the appropriate welcoming dinner for a while. Jamila offered to help, and of course Nana refused to let her so much as lift a little finger. So Jam trailed her into the kitchen anyway. The rest of us followed to see what would happen next. 2 immovable forces? This was high drama. "Well, all right then, all right," Nana complained some, but I could tell she was pleased by the company. It allowed her to show off her wares, put us all to work, and test Jamila at her leisure. She even managed to hum a little of "Lift Every Voice and Sing" while she worked. And then, so did Jamila. "You okay with pork chops and apple gravy, squash casserole, over-creamed potatoes? And you're not allergic to a little cornbread, are you? Or fresh peach cobbler and ice cream?" Nana asked several loaded questions at once. "Love the pork chops, potatoes, peach cobbler," Jamila said as she examined the food. "Neutral on squash casserole. I make creamed cornbread at home. My grandma from Sacramento's recipe. You add creamed corn, which makes it extra moist. Sometimes I throw in pork rinds, too." Nana said. "That sounds pretty good, girl. I'll have to try it." "If it ain't broke," Janny decided to contribute. "Keep your small mind open," said Nana, wagging a crooked pinky finger at Janny. "That's if you ever want it to grow bigger and don't want to remain a small person all your life." "I was just defending your cornbread, Nana," said Janny. Nana winked. "I can take care of myself." Dinner was served in the dining room, with Usher, Yolanda Adams, and Etta James on the CD player. So far, this was pretty good. Just what the doctor ordered. "We eat like this every night," Damon said. "Sometimes we even have breakfast out here in the formal dining room," he told Jamila. I could tell that he already had a little crush on her. Hard not to, I suppose. "Of course you do. Like when the president stops over for tea," Jamila said, and winked at Damon, then at Janny. "He comes here often," Damon said, nodding. "How did you know? My dad tell you?" "Think I saw it on CNN. We get that on the West Coast, you know. We all have TVs out by our hot tubs." Dinner and the small talk were a success. At least I thought so. The laughter was constant and mostly relaxed. Little Alex sat in his high chair, grinning the whole time. At one point, Jamila pulled Damon out of his seat, and they danced a few steps to Aretha's "Who's Zoomin' Who" on the CD player. Nana finally rose from the table and proclaimed, "I absolutely forbid you to help with the dishes, Jamila. Alex can pitch in. That's his job." "Come on, then," Jamila said to Janny and Damon. "Let's go out front and trade gossip about your daddy. And your Nana, too. You have questions? I have questions. Let's dish." "You too, little man," she said to Alex Jr. "You're excused from kitchen detail." I followed Nana out to the kitchen with about half of the dirty dinnerware stacked in my hands and arms. "She's pleasant," Nana said before we got there. "She's certainly full of life." Then she started to cackle like one of those pesky crows in the old-time cartoons. "What's so funny, old woman?" I asked. "You're really getting a big kick out of yourself, aren't you?" "I am. Why wouldn't I?" You're just dying on the vine.